Is the honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to rise this evening in adjournment proceedings, and I'm for a certain number of technical difficulties there, but I'm pleased to be able to rise to pursue a question I originally asked on June the 7th of this year, Mr. Speaker. I was in question period, and I had the honor to actually address my question directly to the Right Honourable Prime Minister. We could actually feel the smoke in Parliament that day. I don't know how many of my colleagues remember that on June 7th, the forest fires across Canada had reached the inside of Parliament. As I said it in my question, that the Ottawa bubble had been pierced by the reality of the climate crisis, that we felt it in the chamber, that there was smoke in our eyes were burning, and that it brought home forcibly that we are in a climate emergency. So my questions to the Prime Minister were directly about what a government would do if it understood that it was an emergency. I know that the Liberals continually claim that they've done more for climate than any previous government. That's possibly true. It's certainly the climate plan put forward under this government was never as complete or as effective as would have been if Paul Martin's government hadn't been brought down on November 28th, 2005. Certainly money was in place in the 2005 budget and the plans were stronger and more comprehensive. But here we are, and it's 2023, and time is literally running out. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has told us clearly that in order to hold to 1.5 degrees Celsius global average temperature increase, which is not a political goal, it's a goal required by physics and chemistry to ensure a livable climate for our kids. In order to hold to that goal, global greenhouse gas emissions must peak and begin to drop rapidly by 2025. That's why Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, has said that continued investments in fossil fuels and fossil fuel infrastructure is, quote, economic and moral madness, unquote. We started talking about the forest fires this year. All around the world, scientists have tracked Canada with alarm. We had a fire season that started earlier and lasted later, and in total burned approximately 19 million hectares. But we also had floods that took lives in Nova Scotia. We also had fires that extended as far as evacuating all of Yellowknife. So both in total area affected and in the number of people affected and lives disrupted, nothing should have said so clearly to the Liberals as this forest fire season that it's not enough to put in place policies on one hand to reduce greenhouse gases if you keep subsidizing fossil fuels with the other hand. Now is the time to bring in an excess profit tax on fossil fuel industry, bringing in $4.2 billion as Motion 92 would have it. Now is the time to cancel the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion before wasting a single additional dollar of public monies. And now is the time to say that if we're serious about reconciliation, we don't drive that pipeline through Secwépemc territory. Now's the time to understand this is an emergency and we act like it. From now on, we take it so seriously that building fossil fuel infrastructure and expanding fossil fuel production will stop, and now.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change and to the Minister for Sport and for Physical Activity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and to my friend and colleague from Saanich Gulf Islands. It's nice to see you on the screen. It would be nicer to see you in the House, and I hope that you're feeling better soon and will be able to rejoin us in this House because I know you love it here and you do such great work here. And I have to say it's extremely refreshing after a couple of days of arguing about whether or not climate change is real in this House with the Conservative Party. It's great to get a push in the opposite direction, and I say with all sincerity, wouldn't it be great if what we debated in this House of Commons was how to fight climate change and not whether to fight climate change? For the last couple of years, since the member from Carleton took over the reins of the Conservative Party, when they ditched Erin O'Toole, they ditched all progressive values and the word climate change from their vernacular, despite all having run on a promise to price carbon. They deny that now. They say, oh, I never said that. I never said climate change. I don't believe in climate change. And today, when we were having debate about carbon pricing, I heard some things from the other side that I prefer not to repeat and keep off the record, because their denialist climate change rhetoric is not worthy of debate in this House. But I would like to thank the member for her questions and for her strong work and advocacy on climate action, and for mentioning the climate emergency over and over in this House. It needs repeating. We are in a climate emergency, not just in Canada, but around the world. And I can assure this House that the Government of Canada is taking this very, very seriously. As the member said, our government is the Canadian government who has done the most to advance our country on climate action. I think it's also important to share some facts about the global energy future that we're advancing towards. The International Energy Agency projects that by 2030, almost half of the world's electricity supply will come from renewables, and 80% of new electricity capacity from now until 2030 will be renewable. That's great news. Canada's electricity grid is already 80% renewable, and despite efforts from Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta, to put a moratorium on all new renewable energy projects, we will continue on that path. In addition to all that, the 50% of all new U.S. car registrations will be electric. Heat pumps and other electric heating systems will outsell fossil fuel boilers. And we will continue to work in that direction, because in order to ensure that Canada is able to seize the economic opportunity in front of us and stave off the climate emergency, we have invested in job-creating measures like renewable power development. And in Budget 2023, we announced a wave of strategic investments to continue our work to catalyze job creation and to attract international investors. So let me provide a couple of examples of that progress. In Nova Scotia, Everwind Fuels recently received approval from our government to build North America's first facility to produce hydrogen from renewables. Look at Ontario, where Volkswagen, Umicore, Stellantis, Marathon, Palladium, and others have decided to invest in our battery ecosystem, and we're supporting those investments. These are great examples of getting projects built, whether that's responsibly developing critical minerals in a manner that unlocks economic opportunities for rural and Indigenous communities, or for helping the next generation of steel and auto workers build the electric cars, buses, and trucks that the world needs to displace fossil fuel vehicles. Mr. Speaker, I'll highlight MTB in Milton. They're a truck company that is doing Canada's first ever diesel to electric city bus conversion. Very proud of that. Out west, we see big things are happening in Saskatchewan. We're seeing BHP construct the largest, one of the lowest emissions potash mines in the world. Cowessess First Nation has built one of the largest wind farms in the country. Sadly, Premier Smith's moratorium on renewable energy approvals is ongoing, but it has not stopped Alberta's renewable energy industry from pushing forward, and they will continue to. So I'll be back in a moment, Mr. Speaker, with a soft rebuttal to my honourable friend and colleague.
The honourable member from Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to my colleague. It's about time we actually did. I agree with my colleague that we need to have a sensible discussion in this place. The climate emergency isn't going away. It's galloping. It threatens lives. And when we talk about affordability, we need to recognize that climate emergency events make life less affordable for everyone. In fact, they threaten our very lives, livelihood, and communities. We need to take the climate crisis far more seriously than we do. And that means the Liberals cannot continue to do one thing for climate and another thing for fossil fuels at the same time, all the time, and think that amounts to climate leadership. It doesn't. Cancel the Trans Mountain Pipeline. We're building it with public money. We're violating Indigenous rights while building it. And if they finish it and start shipping diluted bitumen out in tankers in larger numbers, it's not a question of if, but when there'll be a major spill, despoiling the Salish Sea in ways that can never be cleaned up. Please, for the love of God, take climate seriously.
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker, and I'll just reiterate what a refreshing speech this has been to participate in. I just so sincerely wish that we could be having conversations in this House about how to fight climate change, not with the Conservatives on whether to fight climate change. Climate change is an existential threat. We are in an emergency, and this debate over whether or not we should do the bare minimum from the Conservatives is beyond the pale. The fact that fighting climate change is also about creating good, sustainable jobs for generations to come is not beyond our government, but it's so disappointing to see the Conservative Party of Canada filibustering the Sustainable Jobs Act. Earlier today, the Canadian Labour Congress, which represents 3 million Canadian workers, called on Conservatives to end that debate. The Conservatives are also against Bill C-49. It's just astonishing, Mr. Speaker, what we have to tolerate in this House with respect to the level of debate when it comes to climate change. I once again thank my friend and colleague for her extraordinary leadership on this, and I appreciate everything that she does, and I hope that we can debate and have a conversation in person sometime very soon. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'd like to thank the Parliamentary Secretary and for the member from Saanich Gulf Islands for their contributions to this adjournment proceedings debate. I would now like to turn the floor over to the member from Calgary Centre to continue with his question on this adjournment debate.